Today, also, we're here to talk about the 15th anniversary of Down Terrace.
Yeah.
I watched it recently. I've seen it years ago, but I watched it recently, and I think I've got a new appreciation of it now that I'm older. Have you found that a lot of people, a lot of fans of your work, are coming back and appreciating your older stuff?
I don't know. I think that it's more that they, people like Down Terrace from the start and would constantly go, there's a certain subset of the fans of stuff that say it never got any better than Down Terrace, and it's their favourite one, which is absolutely fine, because in a way there's people say that about all of them, because they're so different. I think that you get a different entry to it. I don't know. I haven't seen it that much over the years, and I've watched it recently I checked a DCP, basically for Glasgow Film Festival. I watched it just to see it again in the cinema, and watched it with Rob Hill, actually, who's in it and wrote it with me. And we were really pleasantly surprised what we saw, because we didn't know what it was going to be like after that time, and we enjoyed it, if you imagine the image of filmmakers enjoying their own work, if you will.
Do you find yourself sitting watching it thinking, oh, I would have changed this or I would have changed that?
No, I don't really think about stuff like that. I mean, it's more, I think about the movies as a whole, like they exist in their own time, and the decisions were all tied up in lots of different things, from the moment of like the environment that we were in, who we were at that time, all those things. You can't really double guess or any of that stuff. I think there was things I thought, I could have tweaked, because I wasn't there for the sound mix, so that's particular. I just go, but that's all really.
From that point, obviously this was independently funded, and since then, you've worked in massive productions. Do you think that experience, when you're going to the bigger films, you're more mindful of budget because you've had that self-funded experience? Yeah, totally.
I think it was a big deal to have made it ourselves, and I think there's an ecosystem in the UK of applying for funding and working your way up through various schemes and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff, but we didn't do any of that. And I think having not done it, then you have a clearer understanding of your own part in what you've made, and you don't have to, for good or for bad, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. And so it was very important to have done that like that. And I've always thought of budget as the film backs into the budget, rather than you're going to push the budget to the edges and try and make it go over, and that's part of craft, I think, as much as anything, that you're always mindful of budget and understand as much about the filmmaking process as you can.
Did you find yourself maybe making something like the Meg 2 and thinking from a budget perspective, why do we need X or Y?
Yeah, I mean, you're very conscious of all that, but then it doesn't really matter how much money you've got, you always haven't got enough money. And as obscene as the money gets, it's still, for what you're supposed to be doing with it, it's still not enough. So you're mindful of not wasting money, and mindful of like making decisions and sticking to them, and the concentration on your decision being a final decision, and not just in a holding pattern. Maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. That's when things start to cost money, and I never like to be redoing things because I've changed my mind necessarily. But you'll always end up adjusting stuff on something like Meg, if the audience tells you have to, from tests and stuff like that. But I definitely went into it wanting to have as much prep as possible beforehand. I think it's like this kind of, I think there's an approach which is like an emperor approach that some people have, which is like, show me stuff and I'll give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and that way leads to expensive filmmaking.
I always find that when I think of Glasgow Film Festival, I'm always thinking of Ben Wheatley. You've had so many films show here. Does this feel like a homecoming in a way?
Yeah, well, I didn't need any excuse to come up here to show Down Terrace. As soon as I was asked, I was like, oh yeah, of course, and I like Glasgow a lot. So, and I've always had a good time here, and I feel the audience here is super warm, and and they're enthusiastic and they're generous and they watch a lot of different films, and the programming is that way as well. So that's great. But it's always been a thing. I think once we started touring the films up and down the country and up and down the UK, it was like that was on purpose to meet the audiences as much as anything and find out what it was like outside of just a London-centric kind of view of distribution, you know. And it was great. You know, we made a lot of friends in Nottingham and Sheffield and Manchester, Liverpool, Edinburgh. You know, it is great to see the way that film is dealt with in every different geographical place is different. You know,
I do love the realism and how realistic Down Terrace is. You know, from the dialogue to the relationships, how things are said. You know, even back then, you know, was that something always at the forefront of your mind? Because I think at that point we had a couple of Guy Ritchie films like Lock, Stock, and those kind of things were floating about.
Yeah, I mean, it was bedded in improvisation, but also local turn of phrase. It's a lot of Brighton slang, but also we wanted it. It was more, we were looking to like Alan Clark than we were looking to Guy Ritchie, and I suppose the other precursor to it would have been the early Shane Meadows movies had been around, so like Romeo Brass and Where's the Money, Ronnie, and stuff like that. So Rob and I had seen all those things, but it was mainly Clark that we were interested in, and like Clark and Mike Lee stuff and things like that.
Certainly, one scene that sticks out in my mind is that bathroom scene where Michael Smiley is getting ready to break down the door.
Yeah.
And I think the line is something like, "Don't break it down; it's Victorian,"
which is plainly a lie as well.
Are there any particular scenes that are your favourite, or any moments like that always?
Yeah, well, it's that house is Bob Hill's house. You know, it's the house that Rob Hill grew up in, and that I'd been visiting at that point for 10 years, making short films, drinking, watching movies. You know, it was a cinema house. You know, and Rob Hill and Janet Hill, Rob's parents, had supported all these ne'er-do-wells making movies. You know, there was a big gang of us doing it, and they were nothing but supportive. You know, all during that period. So it is a kind of hymn to that house, you know, that specific house in Down Terrace, you know. That, and I don't think I wouldn't be making films today if it hadn't been for the encouragement of Rob and Bob Hill, you know.
I certainly think I love how the space was used. You know, everything's so confined, but you guys obviously navigated that pretty well. I suppose that probably helps, given that you've been working in that house for 10 years. You said.
Yeah, I mean, it was. We knew it inside and out. Obviously, when you just like the big room with all the books in it was Rob's bedroom. You know that you know, and like all the others. There's also other, you know, the scenes with Berman dying in his bed. That's just in the house as well. It's like we didn't leave the house. I think we left 3 times. One to shoot Berman dying on the street. We went down into a tunnel that was nearby. It was like a 5-minute walk from the house, and then the stuff in the fields, which was a bit of a drive out. But that was it. Everything was like totally concentrated on there. And if you look at where, like, Pringle's mum gets killed, that's all like the one road over from Down Terrace, and you know, it's really concentrated.
I think I read somewhere that Tony Way is one of these actors that you have killed off several times in your films. So he's kind of like your Sean Bean in a way.
Yeah. Well, Tony's like, I've known Tony since the beginning of working in the industry, and he's like an incredible character actor. Got a brilliant face, you know, and he's one of those actors that you can throw any old line at, and he can perform it and make it sound credible, which is an incredible skill. So yeah, he's always someone I go back to. There's a whole Tony Way Meg 2 sequence which never made it to the screen, which was a real shame, where he dies again by shark.
Put him in the third one just for that, the opening sequence. I must say, I absolutely love Julia Deakin. Like the whole cast is great, but Julia Deakin, so understated in what she does. For you, when you were casting, you know, was she on board right away? Was she
Yeah, well,
your
they
first choice, I
all
suppose?
the parts were written specifically for the actors, so I guess I would, if I'm thinking back, I would have just contacted her and said, I've written a part for you, would you come and do it? And that was it. But I'd worked with her twice before that. So I think I first met her on the second series of Modern Toss, and then she was in Wrong Door as well. So I knew her, and I knew and I'd watched her performances. I knew what they were like. So that whole side of it, I knew she could do it. That she'd be up for it, and the way that she worked, I knew that she'd be able to do it. So that was all kind of a shortcut, and he's lucky that everybody said yes, really. Smiley was. We didn't really know Smiley up until. I'd worked with him on Wrong Door, but I hadn't really spent more than 5 minutes with him before Down Terrace. So obviously, subsequently, we worked together quite a lot. But I hadn't really even had a drink with him or anything at that point.
I find it quite chilling how Julia Deakin is so blasé about the kind of death stuff, but it's amusing as well at the same time.
Yeah, I think that there's a style and a genre style that comes from television and from film where people act in a much more hysterical way than real people act, and to have people play it straight and not go crazy with the emoting, you start to see it more realistically.
Obviously, you've had a varied career. You've done a plethora of different things, and you've also now made your own comic book, Utility, with Joe Curry. Was that a sort of different pressure to filmmaking? How was that experience, and was it always been a life ambition?
Yeah, well, I did the Cosmic Music was the first thing I did with Joe, which was like a graphic novel, and that started off something small and then just turned into some massive thing that took about 3 years to make. And then we did Utility as trying to work out how to do it quicker, and it was just for fun, and I tend to do that. I swing around if I fancy doing something, I'll try and go and do it. So it was the same with doing Doctor Who, and The Meg, and then with these comic books. So yeah, it's been good fun, and it's like that. I like comics. I've always been a fan of comics and read comics since I was a kid, but it's like there's something about a comic that is it's physical, and you can see it in a shop, and they take it and they read it, and it's a thing, and that film is brilliant, but it's ephemeral. Where is it? It's like flickering down a tube of light onto us in a cinema, or it's like on a telescreen. But when you turn it off, it disappears. There's something satisfyingly physical about a comic. We found that because we put out vinyl as well when we were doing the soundtracks for the movies, and there was something really nice about holding a record and going, this is a real thing.
Yeah, I'm still the same with DVDs and Blu-rays, and I suppose it's sad in a way that it seems like physical media in the film world seems to be going the wrong direction compared to like vinyl. But then
vinyl and Blu-rays and DVDs hold a similar thing, but like a comic book it's physically itself. It doesn't need anything else. There's no player for it or anything else to translate it. You just operate it. Which I kind of like. But yeah, no, it's a shame that the physical media stuff is going, really. Yeah.
And also you've got a number of different projects on the go, a lot of plates getting spun. I want to ask about Normal, if that's okay. I know Bob Odenkirk's starring, and he's working again with Derek at Kolstad.
Yeah.
Worked in Nobody. How are things going with that? Is it in pre-production at the moment?
Yeah, it's kind of a soft pre-production at the moment. And that's going to happen towards the end of the year, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that, and it feels like it's like a classic action kind of adventure film, and it goes back to like, I think what it feels like it's going to be is like Nobody, in the respect that when I saw Nobody I was like, oh fuck, this is like a proper movie. I haven't seen one of these for ages. It's like it felt, because it came right at the end of COVID, didn't it? And it was got that kind of, it was one of the first films out that and like Suicide Squad, I think, at the time, and I was like, and I just really enjoyed it, and it was really. I think that's the thing that Derek does, and certainly does in the Wick stuff as well. It's harking back to before superheroes, basically.
And just one final question, if you don't mind. In your schedule, is there a space for a certain prehistoric shark? Are you thinking about the Meg 3? Is that on your radar?
Not at the moment, no, but I'm sure someone will be kind of cooking that up at some point.
Well, Ben, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Down Terrace 15th anniversary of Glasgow Film Festival is going to be tremendous.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it.